The rain battered Evelyn Harper's bedroom window, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the storm in her heart. At 28, she stood at the edge of her world, a triplet born into a family where love was supposed to be simple except hers wasn't. She clutched a crumpled letter from her mother, its words sharp as knives. "You're tearing us apart, Evie." In the small town of Willow Creek, Virginia, the Harper triplets were local legends. 3 girls identical in face but worlds apart in spirit. Clara, the poised future lawyer, Sophie, the bubbly cheerleader, and Evelyn, the quiet artist who saw colors where others saw gray. Growing up, they shared everything: secrets, clothes, dreams, until Evelyn's heart dared to love differently. At 16, she'd whispered her truth to her sisters under the glow of a summer campfire. She loved women. Clara had frowned, Sophie had laughed it off, but their mother, Diane, had overheard, and the fracture began. Now, a decade later, Evelyn stood in her childhood bedroom, packing a suitcase. The letter from her mother was the final blow after years of strained dinners and hushed arguments. Diane, a devout woman shaped by the town's conservative pulse, couldn't reconcile Evelyn's identity with her vision of family. "You're choosing this path," she'd said, voice trembling. "You're choosing to be alone." Evelyn's sisters, though loving, stayed silent, their straight lives fitting neatly into Willow Creek's mold. Evelyn didn't fit. She never had. The suitcase zipped shut, and Evelyn's gaze fell on a faded sketch she'd drawn at 17, a woman's silhouette under a starlit sky, her first attempt to capture the longing she couldn't name. That longing had a name now: Lila Monroe. Evelyn met her 3 months ago at a Richmond art gallery, where Lila's bold laugh and piercing blue eyes cut through Evelyn's guarded heart like a blade through canvas. Lila, a 30-year-old photographer with a penchant for breaking rules, saw Evelyn's sketches and said, "You paint like you're afraid to be seen. Stop hiding." For the first time, Evelyn felt found. But loving Lila came with a cost. Willow Creek whispered about the Harper girl who went astray, and Diane's disapproval grew louder. Evelyn's sisters tried to bridge the gap: Clara with her careful diplomacy, Sophie with her forced cheer, but the tension was a tightrope, and Evelyn was slipping. Tonight, she'd made her choice. She was leaving for Richmond to build a life with Lila, even if it meant leaving her family behind. The drive to Richmond was a blur of rain and regret. Evelyn's old Honda rattled along Route 60, her sketches stacked in the back seat, each one a piece of her soul. She thought of Clara's wedding last summer, where she'd been asked to tone it down, so as not to embarrass the family. She thought of Sophie's engagement party, where Diane had introduced Evelyn as the artistic one, avoiding any mention of her life. She thought of Lila, who'd held her hand under the table and whispered, "You're enough." The memory steadied her. Richmond's skyline emerged through the rain, a mosaic of lights promising a new start. Lila's apartment was a third-floor walk-up in the fan district, cluttered with camera gear and half-finished poems. When Evelyn knocked, Lila opened the door, her black hair mussed, a grin spreading across her face. "You made it," she said, pulling Evelyn into a hug that smelled of coffee and leather. The warmth of it unraveled the knot in Evelyn's chest. They sat on Lila's couch, rain tapping the windows, and Evelyn poured out her story: the letter, the years of feeling like an outsider in her own family, the weight of being the different triplet. Lila listened, her hand resting on Evelyn's knee, her eyes fierce. "You're not tearing anything apart," she said. "You're building something new. They'll see it one day." Evelyn wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at her. Could she really leave her sisters, her history behind? Clara and Sophie weren't cruel, they loved her, in their way, but their silence stung more than their mother's words. Lila handed her a mug of tea, her fingers brushing Evelyn's. "You don't have to fight alone anymore," she said. The words were a lifeline, but Evelyn knew the battle was far from over. That night, they lay in Lila's bed, the city humming outside. Evelyn traced the tattoo on Lila's wrist, a tiny compass, inked after she'd left her own small-town past. "It's for finding my way," Lila had explained once. Evelyn wondered if she'd ever find hers. As Lila slept, Evelyn stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying her mother's letter. She wasn't just leaving Willow Creek. She was stepping into a world where she'd have to fight to belong, not just with her family, but with herself. The next morning, Evelyn woke to the smell of pancakes and Lila's off-key humming. They ate on the balcony, the September air crisp, the city alive below. Lila talked about her next photography project, a series on hidden stories of queer love in the South. You should paint for it, she said, her eyes bright. Show the world who you are. Evelyn hesitated. Her art had always been private, a shield against judgment. But Lila's belief in her was infectious, and for the first time, she imagined her sketches hanging in a gallery unapologetic. By noon, Evelyn was unpacking her suitcase in Lila's spare room, her sketches spread across the floor. Each one told a story of longing, of fear, of love she'd kept hidden. Lila knelt beside her, pointing to a drawing of two hands entwined. This one, she said. This is us. Evelyn's throat tightened. She'd drawn it after their first kiss, a moment stolen in a park under a fading sunset. Felt like a promise, but promises were fragile. That afternoon, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Mom's not okay. She's talking about cutting you out of the will. Please come home. The words hit like a punch. Evelyn stared at the screen, her new life with Lila suddenly colliding with the old one she tried to leave. She loved her sisters, her mother, even through the pain. Could she walk away entirely? Or was there a way to fight for her place in both worlds? Lila noticed her silence. What's wrong? She asked, her voice soft but steady. Evelyn showed her the text, tears welling. Lila pulled her close, her arms a safe harbor. You don't have to choose between them and you, she said. But you can't keep living half a life to make them comfortable. Evelyn nodded, but the weight of Clara's message lingered. She wasn't just fighting for love, she was fighting for her right to exist as herself. As the sun set over Richmond, Evelyn stood at Lila's window watching the city glow. She thought of her sisters, their shared childhood, the way they'd once braided each other's hair and dreamed of futures that now seemed so far apart. She thought of her mother, whose love came with conditions Evelyn could never meet. And she thought of Lila, who saw her not as a triplet, not as a daughter, but as Evelyn, whole, flawed, and enough. She turned to Lila, who was sorting through negatives at her desk, and said, I want to go back. Not to stay but to talk. To try. Lila smiled, a mix of pride and worry. Then we'll go together, she said. Evelyn felt a spark of hope, fragile but real. She wasn't just running away anymore. She was running toward something, toward a life where she could love, create, and belong no matter the cost. The drive back to Willow Creek felt like crossing a battlefield. Evelyn gripped the steering wheel, Lila in the passenger seat, her camera slung around her neck like a soldier's weapon. The rolling Virginia hills, dusted with early autumn reds, should have been calming, but Evelyn's pulse raced with every mile closer to home. They arrived at the Harper house just as dusk settled, the white colonial glowing under a bruised sky. Evelyn's childhood home looked both familiar and foreign, its wraparound porch heavy with memories of summer nights and sisterly secrets. Lila squeezed her hand. You've got this, she said, her voice a steady anchor. Evelyn nodded, but her stomach churned. She wasn't just facing her mother, she was facing the weight of 28 years of trying to fit into a family that didn't fully see her. Diane opened the door, her face a mask of exhaustion. Her graying hair was pulled tight, and her eyes, so like Evelyn's, flickered with something between anger and grief. You came, she said, her voice flat. Clara and Sophie stood behind her, their identical faces tense. Clara, ever the peacemaker, offered a small smile. Sophie, fidgeting with her engagement ring, looked away. The air was thick with unspoken words. Inside, the living room smelled of lavender and old books, a shrine to the Harper family's history. Photos lined the mantel: Clara's graduation, Sophie's cheer trophies, Evelyn's art awards from high school, before things changed. Diane sat stiffly on the couch, her hands clasped. I didn't think you'd bring her, she said, glancing at Lila, who stood by Evelyn unyielding. Her name is Lila, Evelyn said, her voice steadier than she felt. And she's part of my life. The words hung heavy, a declaration she'd never dared make in this house. Diane's lips tightened, but she didn't respond. Clara cleared her throat, always the mediator. Mom just wants to talk, Evie. She's worried about you. Worried? Evelyn's voice cracked. She wrote me out of her life, Clara. That's not worry, that's rejection. Sophie flinched, but Diane leaned forward, her eyes blazing. You're the one rejecting us, she said. This choice of yours, it's not who we are. It's not what this family stands for. Lila's hand twitched, but she stayed silent, letting Evelyn lead. Evelyn's chest tightened, years of hurt rising like a tide. It's not a choice, Mom. It's who I am. I've spent my whole life trying to make you see that, but you won't. Her voice broke and Lila's hand found hers, a quiet strength. The argument spiraled, voices overlapping like a storm. Diane spoke of tradition, of faith, of the town's expectations. Evelyn countered with love, with truth, with the pain of hiding. Clara tried to calm them, but Sophie's silence was deafening. Finally, Evelyn stood, her hands shaking. I'm not here to beg for your approval, she said. I'm here because I love you, all of you. But I can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not. She turned to leave, Lila at her side, when Sophie's voice stopped her. Evie, wait. Her sister's eyes were wet, her voice small. I didn't know it hurt you this much. I should have said something. Clara nodded, stepping closer. We don't want to lose you, she said. But we don't know how to do this. For a moment hope flickered. But Diane's silence was a wall unbroken. Evelyn looked at her mother, searching for a crack in her resolve but found none. I'm not asking you to change overnight, Evelyn said softly. But I'm done hiding. I hope you can meet me halfway someday. She walked out, Lila's arm around her, the weight of her words lingering in the air. Back in Richmond, the night felt heavier. Evelyn sat on Lila's balcony, sketching the outline of her childhood home, her pencil strokes sharp with emotion. Lila joined her, setting down 2 glasses of wine. You were brave today, she said. Braver than I've ever been. Evelyn shook her head. I don't feel brave. I feel like I lost them. Lila took her hand, her thumb tracing circles. You didn't lose them. You showed them who you are. That's not lost, that's freedom. Evelyn wanted to believe her, but the ache in her chest was raw. She thought of Sophie's tears, Clara's plea, Diane's silence. Could love bridge a gap that wide? The next week, Evelyn threw herself into her art. Lila's photography project became their shared mission, a way to channel pain into creation. Evelyn painted portraits of queer couples in the South, hands clasped, eyes defiant, love unapologetic. Each stroke felt like a rebellion against Willow Creek's whispers, against her mother's letter. Lila photographed her as she worked, capturing the fire in her eyes. This is you, Lila said, showing her a photo. This is the Evelyn the world needs to see. But the world wasn't always kind. At a local art fair, Evelyn's paintings drew stares, some admiring, some hostile. A man in a trucker hat muttered, "This ain't right," as he passed her booth. Evelyn's heart sank, but Lila stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Keep walking," she said, her gaze unflinching. The man backed off, but the encounter left Evelyn shaken. "How do you do it?" she asked Lila later. "How do you keep fighting?" Lila shrugged, her smile bittersweet. "I've had practice. Grew up in a town like yours, got kicked out at 17. You learn to build your own family." Evelyn listened, her heart aching for Lila's past, for her own present. She wondered if she could be that strong, if she could carve out a place where she belonged. That night, Evelyn got a call from Clara. "Mom's been quiet since you left," she said. "But Sophie and we want to come to your art show next month. We want to understand." Evelyn's breath caught. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, but it was a step. She told Lila, who grinned and said, "See? You're not as alone as you think." As Evelyn hung up, she looked at her latest painting, a woman standing alone under a stormy sky, her face lit with quiet defiance. It was her, but it was also every person who'd ever fought to be seen. She added a small detail, a hand reaching out from the edge of the canvas, offering hope. It felt like a promise to herself, to Lila, to the family she still loved. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, Evelyn believed she could win it. The art show loomed like a horizon Evelyn couldn't quite reach. In a borrowed warehouse in Richmond's Arts District, she and Lila transformed the space into a gallery of stories, her paintings and Lila's photographs weaving tales of love, struggle, and resilience. But as the opening night approached, Evelyn's nerves frayed. Claire and Sophie were coming. What if they saw her work and still didn't understand? The warehouse glowed with string lights, the walls alive with color. Evelyn's paintings hung beside Lila's photos, each piece a window into a world Willow Creek rarely acknowledged. One painting showed two women dancing in a rain-soaked alley, their joy defiant. Another captured a quiet moment of hands brushing, a love too tender for words. Lila's photos were raw couples laughing, crying, fighting for their place. Together, their work was a manifesto. Love was love and it deserved to be seen. On opening night, Evelyn wore a burgundy dress, her auburn hair loose, her hands trembling as she adjusted a frame. Lila, in a tailored blazer, moved through the crowd with ease, her confidence a stark contrast to Evelyn's anxiety. "You're gonna kill it," Lila whispered, kissing her cheek. Evelyn smiled, but her eyes scanned the door for her sisters. Clara arrived first, her lawyerly poise softened by a nervous smile. Sophie followed, her cheerleader energy subdued, her eyes wide as she took in the art. They hugged Evelyn, their embraces cautious but warm. "This is wow," Clara said, studying a painting of two women under a starry sky. Sophie nodded, her voice quiet. "It's beautiful, Evie. I didn't know you could do this." The words were a bomb, but Evelyn braced for their questions. They wandered the gallery, lingering at each piece. Clara asked about the stories behind the paintings. Sophie pointed to a photo of an elderly lesbian couple, her eyes misty. "They look so happy," she said. Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. "They fought for that happiness," she said. "Like I'm trying to." The night was a blur of compliments and conversations, but Evelyn's heart stayed with her sisters. They didn't flinch at the art, didn't shy away from the truth it told. When the crowd thinned, they sat together on a bench, the air heavy with unspoken apologies. "We should have been there for you," Clara said, her voice breaking. "I thought keeping the peace was enough, but it wasn't." Sophie reached for Evelyn's hand. "I was scared to rock the boat," she admitted. "Mom's so set in her ways. But I hate that you felt alone." Evelyn's eyes stung. She'd spent years craving the Isher sisters seeing her, not as the different triplet, but as their sister, whole and human. But Diane's absence was a shadow. "She didn't come," Evelyn said, more to herself than to them. Clara sighed. "She's struggling, Evie. She loves you, but she doesn't know how to show it." Evelyn nodded, the ache familiar. She looked at Lila across the room, laughing with a guest, and felt a surge of gratitude. Her family was fractured, but she wasn't alone. After the show, Evelyn and Lila cleaned up, the warehouse quiet. Clara and Sophie had promised to visit again to keep talking. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Lila wrapped an arm around Evelyn as they locked up. "You did it," she said. "You showed them who you are." Evelyn leaned into her, exhausted but hopeful. "I'm still scared," she admitted. Lila kissed her forehead. "Good. That means you're alive." The next month was a whirlwind. The art show got local press, and Evelyn's paintings sold faster than she'd expected. Lila's photos caught the eye of a curator in D.C., who wanted to feature their work in a larger exhibit. But success came with scrutiny. A conservative blog in Willow Creek posted about the Harper girls' scandalous art, and Diane called Evelyn her voice cold. "You're embarrassing us," she said. "This isn't what I raised you for." Evelyn hung up, her hands shaking. Lila found her curled on the couch, sketching furiously to calm her nerves. "She'll never get it," Evelyn said, her voice raw. Lila sat beside her, her presence steady. "Then stop trying to make her. Live for you, Evie. For us." Evelyn nodded, but the words felt like a wound. She loved her mother even now. Could she let go of that hope? She threw herself into her next painting, a self-portrait. A woman standing at a crossroads, one path leading to a house that looked like home, the other to a city of light. It was her story, her choice. Lila photographed her as she worked, capturing the raw emotion in her eyes. "This is your best yet," Lila said, her voice soft with awe. Evelyn smiled, but the crossroads in her painting felt too real. One evening, Sophie called unexpectedly. "I told Mom she's wrong," she said, her voice fierce. "I told her you're not embarrassing UCRE, inspiring us." Evelyn's heart leapt, but Sophie's next words were heavy. "She's not ready, Evie. But Claire and I are. We're coming to DC for your exhibit." The call ended and Evelyn cried, a mix of joy and grief. Her sisters were trying, but her mother's silence was a wall she couldn't climb. As the DC exhibit approached, Evelyn and Lila worked late, their apartment a chaos of paint and film. They argued sometimes over deadlines, over Evelyn's tendency to retreat into doubt, but their love held firm. One night, Lila pulled Evelyn into a slow dance in their living room. No music, just the rhythm of their breathing. "We're building something," Lila said. "Not just art, a life." Evelyn clung to her, the words a lifeline. The night before the DC exhibit, Evelyn finished her self-portrait. She added a detail, a faint figure in the distance reaching out. It wasn't her mother, her sisters, or Lilith, was her, offering herself the acceptance she'd always sought. She showed it to Lila, who smiled, tears in her eyes. "That's you," she said. "That's the woman I love." Evelyn felt the weight of her past shift, not gone but lighter. She was ready to face the world, not as a triplet, not as a daughter, but as herself. The DC exhibit was a kaleidoscope of nerves and hope. The gallery, a sleek space in DuPont Circle, buzzed with anticipation as Evelyn and Lila hung their work. Evelyn's self-portrait took center stage, its crossroads a silent challenge to every viewer. Lila's photos flanked it, each one a story of love carved from struggle. Evelyn's heart raced. Clara and Sophie would be there, but Diane had made no promises. The gallery filled quickly, a mix of art lovers, activists, and curious strangers. Evelyn wore a black dress, her auburn hair pinned up, her hazel eyes scanning the crowd. Lila, in a sharp blazer, worked the room with her usual charm, but she kept close to Evelyn, sensing her tension. "You're a rock star," Lila whispered, squeezing her hand. Evelyn smiled, but her thoughts were on her sisters, and the empty space where her mother might have stood. Clara and Sophie arrived early, their presence a quiet comfort. Clara, in a tailored coat, studied each painting with care. Sophie, in a bright sweater, took photos to share with her fiancé. They lingered at Evelyn's self-portrait, their silence heavy with understanding. "This is you," Clara said, her voice soft. "All of you." Sophie nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud, Evie." The words were a bridge, fragile but real, across the years of distance. The night was a success, paintings sold, photos praised, connections made. But Evelyn's heart stayed with her sister's effort to show up, to see her. They stayed late, helping clean up, their laughter an echo of childhood. "We're not perfect," Clara said as they hugged goodbye. "But we're trying." Sophie added, "We love you, Evie. Always." Evelyn clung to them, her heart full and aching. It wasn't everything, but it was enough for now. Back in Richmond, life settled into a rhythm. Evelyn painted, Lila photographed, and their apartment became a haven of creation and love. But Diane's absence lingered like a bruise. Evelyn tried calling, leaving voicemails that went unanswered. She wrote letters, pouring out her heart, but got only silence. One night she broke down, sobbing into Lila's arms. "Why can't she love me as I am?" she asked. Lila held her, her voice fierce. "She's missing out on you. That's her loss, not yours." Lila's words were a spark. Evelyn began a new painting, a triptych of the Harper triplets, 3 women, identical but distinct, each standing in her own light. Clara's panel showed her in a courtroom, poised and just. Sophie showed her cheering at a game, vibrant and free. Evelyn showed her painting under a starry sky, unapologetic. It was her way of reclaiming her place, not as the different triplet, but as one of 3, equal and whole. The triptych became her obsession, each brushstroke a step toward healing. Lila photographed her progress, her lens capturing Evelyn's transformation from doubt to defiance. They planned to show the triptych at a Richmond Pride event, a bold statement in a city that still wrestled with its conservative roots. But as the event neared, Evelyn got a letter, not from Diane, but from a Willow Creek neighbor. It was kind but blunt. Diane was unwell, struggling with guilt and grief. "She talks about you," the letter said. "She's just too stubborn to reach out." Evelyn's heart twisted. She showed the letter to Lila, who read it silently, then looked up. "You don't owe her anything," Lila said. "But if you want to try one more time, I'm with you." Evelyn nodded, torn between anger and love. She decided to send the triptych to Willow Creek, not to Diane, but to the town's community center with a note, "For my family, who taught me to fight for who I am." The Pride event was electric, a sea of rainbows and resilience. Evelyn's triptych drew crowds, its message clear. Family wasn't just blood, it was choice, courage, love. Clara and Sophie came, their presence a quiet victory. They hugged Evelyn, their pride unspoken but palpable. "Mom saw the paintings," Clara whispered. She cried. Evelyn's breath caught. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a crack in the wall. That night, Evelyn and Lila danced under the festival lights, their bodies close, their love a rebellion against every whisper, every letter, every silence. Evelyn felt the weight of her past lift, not gone but lighter. She was building a family, not the one she was born into, but the one she chose. Lila kissed her, her lips soft and sure. "You belong," she said. Evelyn believed her. But the fight wasn't over. A week later, Evelyn got a call from Clara. "Mom wants to see you," she said, her voice cautious. "She's not ready to admit she's wrong, but she's asking for you." Evelyn's heart raced, a mix of hope and fear. She looked at Lila, who nodded, her eyes steady. "Whatever you decide, I'm here," Lila said. Evelyn took a deep breath, her decision forming. She'd gone it to beg, not to hide, but to show her mother who she was one last time. The road to Willow Creek felt different this time. Less like a battlefield and more like a pilgrimage. Evelyn drove, Lila beside her, the triptych carefully packed in the back seat. The paintings were her offering, her truth, her final attempt to bridge the gap with her mother. The September sky was clear, the Virginia hills ablaze with color, but Evelyn's heart was a tangle of hope and dread. They pulled up to the Harper house at noon, the familiar porch creaking under their steps. Diane opened the door, her face thinner, her eyes weary but softer than Evelyn remembered. "You brought the paintings," Diane said, her voice unsteady. Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. "I wanted you to see them." Lila stayed close, her presence a quiet strength as they carried the triptych inside. The living room was unchanged, still a shrine to the past, but Diane had set up easels for the paintings. Evelyn unveiled them, her hands trembling. Clara's courtroom, Sophie's cheer, her own starry sky. Diane stared, her eyes tracing each panel, lingering on Evelyn's. "You painted us," she said, almost a whisper. "All of us." Evelyn nodded, her voice soft. "We're still a family, Mom. Even if I'm different." Diane sat, her hands clasped, her silence heavy. Clara and Sophie arrived, their presence easing the tension. They hugged Evelyn, their warmth a reminder of the bridges they'd built. Diane spoke at last, her voice raw. "I saw your paintings at the community center. I didn't want to, but I couldn't stop looking." She paused, her eyes wet. "I don't understand you, Evie, but I don't want to lose you." The words were a crack in the wall, not wide, but enough to let light through. Evelyn's eyes stung, but she held her ground. "I'm not asking you to understand," she said. "I'm asking you to try. To see mere ally see me." Diane nodded, a small gesture, but it was more than Evelyn had ever gotten. Lila squeezed her hand, her pride unspoken but clear. They talked for hours, not just about the paintings but about the years of silence, the pain, the love that still bound them. Clara and Sophie shared their own regrets, their efforts to support Evelyn without betraying Diane. It wasn't perfect, Diane's beliefs hadn't shifted, not entirely, but she listened, and that was a start. When Evelyn and Lila left, Diane hugged her, a brief, awkward embrace that held a promise of more. Back in Richmond, Evelyn felt lighter, as if she'd shed a weight she'd carried for years. She and Lila hung the triptych in their apartment, a reminder of the family she'd fought for, not just the one she was born into, but the one she'd chosen. Her paintings and Lila's photos filled galleries across the South, their work a beacon for others fighting to be seen. Clara and Sophie visited often, their bond growing stronger. Diane called sometimes, her words cautious but kind, a slow journey toward understanding. One evening, under a Richmond sunset, Evelyn and Lila sat on their balcony, sketching and photographing the city they'd made their home. Evelyn painted a new paise, a woman standing under a sky of stars, no longer alone, her hand clasped by another. It was her and Lila, their love a quiet revolution. Lila leaned over, kissing her softly. "You fought for this," she said. "And you won." Evelyn smiled, her heart full. She'd been born a triplet, one of three, but her journey was her own. She'd fought to belong not just in her family, but in the world, in her own skin. The fight wasn't over, prejudice lingered. Doubts crept in, but she wasn't alone anymore. She had Lila, her sisters, her art, and a growing sense of herself. She belonged not because she fit, but because she dared to be herself. As the stars emerged, Evelyn looked at Lila, her compass in a world that often felt lost. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Lila grinned, her eyes bright. "For what? Loving you? That's the easy part." They laughed, their hands entwined, the city humming below. Evelyn knew the road ahead wouldn't be smooth, but she was ready not just to fight, but to live, to love, to create. She was Evelyn Harper and she belonged. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.